Hi everyone, this is Robert and welcome to Deep Geek. Welcome to a live stream. I know a lot of people watch on catch up, so welcome to you if you're watching on catch up, and a particular welcome if you're watching in the chat room, watching live. So hello to you. I'll come and say a proper hello to you in just one moment. Today we are going to look at the subject of Sansa. Now, this is probably, out of all of the subjects that I've announced that I'm going to be doing a live stream on, this is probably the one that I've had the most divided opinion on. Not whether that I should talk about Sansa, but whether or not people love her or hate her. So this is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to dive into it. As usual, what I'll probably do is I'll give my take just to start us off, and then we'll dive in with a few questions. I think in the first half we'll probably look at what's been going on with Sansa, what her character arc has been so far. Then in the second half we'll start to look a little bit more at what her fate might be, what we might expect to happen in season 8 and in the rest of the books. So that's where I think we're going to go with this. Obviously, as we always do, if there are any super chats, then we'll come to them straight away. And first of all, I just want to say a few hellos to some people in the chat room. So let's just have a quick look in there. A lot of familiar names, actually. Great to see you, Talamaska Dan, Pablo, Chrissy, 26 Art Girl. Who else is around there? Emilio, I see you've done a couple of super chats already. I will get to them in just 1 second. Arday is there. I think I saw Lost for Words a moment ago. Fraulein Winter, great to see you as well. Lovely to see all the people in there in the chat. So what I'll do is I will, well, actually, apologies. I want to start off by saying hi to someone who I know isn't watching live, but is going to be watching on catch up. Crypt of Winterfell, you put in a super chat well before this, but it was incredibly generous. $74, $71.50 British pounds, real money, as you put it. Thank you. That means a lot to me. I know that you're a huge fan, and I really appreciate it. So thank you very much. And no question along with it either. So I will happily talk about my own views to start with. Okay, so Sansa divides opinion. And I kind of understand this because probably for the first 3 or 4 seasons of Game of Thrones, I did not like the character of Sansa. I thought she was a little bit wet. I thought she wasn't very proactive. Out of all the Starks, she was probably the one that I liked the least. So I understand where the Sansa hate comes from, but at the same time, I think particularly now in the books and also in the show, she started to move through this, and her character arc for me has reached the point where now I can just say, yeah, she's now a really strong, really proactive character. And the thinking for this has to start with the fact, I think, that at the start of the books, it doesn't come across, they've not got the ages exactly right for all of the actors, but in the books, when it starts, she's 11 years old. She's a child. And she's brought up as the oldest daughter with a mother like Cat, who herself was taken away from her home and effectively put into a political marriage with someone that she pretty much never met before. That is what she's expected to do with her life. That is what she's been brought up to do, and she's been taught all these kind of courtly virtues. And as an 11-year-old, she has some quite romantic ideals about knights and castles and courtly life and all the rest of it. And I don't think we can judge her for who she is as a child. That seems like a perfectly normal state for her to be in. And then when she gets down to King's Landing and then the horrors start to pile up one after another, she sees her father killed before her eyes. She sees every single person she knows and trusts in the entire city, in fact for hundreds of miles around her, is gone. She's completely alone, completely isolated, and completely at the mercy of some really horrific people. And so she's there at the mercy of Cerseis. She's there at the mercy of Joffrey, who, let's face it, is a complete abuser to her. And this keeps on going. She gets married to someone that she finds physically repulsive. He's quite a good guy, Tyrion, as we know, but it's not what she wants to. She's forced into a marriage with someone that she doesn't want to be married to. Then you get the whole Littlefinger situation, which is just too icky for words. Then on the show, you get Ramsay. Again, she gets abused. And I think if we look at that character as a person, you have to say she has been through a horrific time. And for me, if we met someone like that, we would not be looking at this person as being a bit wet or a bit rubbish or a bit not proactive enough. We'd be saying this is a victim, and if they've managed to come through the other side, as Sansa has, as a strong person, then they are hugely heroic, and they're the kind of person we should be cheering on. So my view is that Sansa, far from being this kind of wet blanket, actually is as a victim all the way through her lives, but she has learned bit by bit by bit. And in the books, particularly in the preview chapter for the Winds of Winter that I narrated quite recently for my patrons, we see her starting to put this learning into practice, and it's quite subtle to start with, but it was you see that she has learned how to manage Sweet Robin, Lysa Arryn's son, who, let's face it, can at the drop of a hat order people to be thrown out of the moon door. That's the kind of thing that he does all the time. She is the person who is best at managing and frankly manipulating him. And she's got a slightly different storyline in the books, that she gets lined up by Littlefinger to be married to someone called Harry Harding, who is the heir to the Vale, heir to the throne in the Vale. And she meets him, and her first thought is, yes, he's really attractive. But then her mind immediately goes, but Joffrey was really attractive. And you know what? The person who treated me right was Tyrion, not him. And so you can see that she's learning. And she's learning on the show as well. And she's moved up, and it's her who's taken control in the north. This isn't Jon. We see Jon as being this great leader because he's the fighter. But when you think about it, Sansa, the moment she realized what was going on with Ramsay, she immediately took control of the situation and tried to get out. She talked Theon around. And then when they got out, she forgave him, which I think is a hugely magnanimous thing. She forgave him for all the sins that he'd done to her family. And then when she met up with Jon, Jon was all for just like giving up and going south and like forgetting it all. And it was her who talked him into retaking Winterfell. And then it's her in season 8. She's manipulated Littlefinger to get all of his forces up to help retaking Winterfell, and then in season 7, she's there coordinating the defenses of Winterfell, making sure that there is enough food so that people can eat. And that, for me, is the kind of evidence that she has grown through this journey. So that's where we're. That's my starting point. As I say, I understand the Sansa hate. I also wasn't a big fan to start with, but my appreciation of her character has grown as we've gone through the season. So that's the starting point. We did get a couple of super chats from Emilio earlier on, so I'm going to pick up then. If you've got any other questions, do come back with that. Emilio, I think I've lost your first one off of there, or maybe I have. No, I haven't. So Sansa is representative of the Maiden. This is one of the 7 aspects of the worship of the 7. So she would teach Littlefinger, like the Maiden does, with little birds to fly through the moon door. Yeah, I like that idea. So the Maiden is representative. I can't remember the exact line, but there's a song about her that talks about her singing, and sweet birds come out and teach people to fly. So yes, I think that's right, and I think that in the books as well as on the show, she is going to be the downfall of Littlefinger. I think she will see through his lies and understand who he is. Your second one, excuse me 1 second. Your second super chat there. Again, thank you very much. A lot of people forget that Margaret Beaufort sat her son on the throne when the War of Roses ended. I think that Sansa, that will be Sansa's role with her son. Now that's quite interesting, and I think that's moving on to where we see her in the future, that I will come on to in just a second. This comes back to the original idea that George R.R. Martin had when he was coming up with Game of Thrones, which was that it's a sort of a fantasy reflection of the Wars of the Roses. Now, how the Wars of the Roses ended was that the two houses, House York and House Lancaster, which very easily are translated in House Stark and House Lannister, they were joined in marriage, and so the two rival claims to the throne came together, and that's effectively what ended a lot of the warfare. That's quite a simplistic overview. Margaret Beaufort was the mother of the person who became Henry VII, who I think was Henry Lancaster, or certainly for the heir from the Lancaster line, who married Elizabeth of York. Now, in that, if we're going to take that as an idea, for me, I think that Sansa fits more into the idea of Elizabeth of York as a Stark, rather than as a sort of a Lannister-Lancaster figure. And as a result, I would see it's perhaps more likely that she would therefore marry the heir of the Lannister line, which is perhaps Tyrion. So if she's going to marry anyone, which I think is where that line of thought goes to, then I think she would marry Tyrion. But as we'll come on to a bit later, my personal view increasingly is that she's going to end up not marrying anyone, but being a self-sufficient woman, because she's been through a lot. And frankly, her experiences of marriage and relationships have not been good. So I don't think that she will see the need for her to get married again. Okay, let's have a look in. I hope that answers those for you. Let's have a quick look here at some of the questions. Starkiller 86 says, I don't think Sansa has a future. She won't survive the Great War against the dead. Possible, but I think she will survive personally. I think that she's one of these people in this bracket that will see it through because she has suffered so much. That seems to be the way that this goes, that the characters who've suffered the most as a result of the society that has been built up and the wars that they've gone through, those characters are the ones who are surviving. So these are people like Theon and like Tyrion, who has suffered a lot more actually in the books than he has on the show, and Sandor. And I think for me, Sansa has suffered hugely, not just in terms of the individual people who've abused her, but the system that was surrounding her, this patriarchal feudal system that meant that she was expected to go off and marry someone that she'd never really met and have no say in it, and live out these virtues and be a person that was predetermined for her. So I think she has certainly suffered through this. Salsa dancing would indeed make her more interesting. I should probably say, although I have huge respect for her, I still don't. She's still not my favorite character. So, yeah, she's not as interesting for me personally as some people like Tyrion. Pardon me. Dan says, too late in the day for her character in my mind. Would rather other characters got the screen time. Yeah, I know, Dan, you're one of the people who's less keen on Sansa, if you don't mind me putting it that lightly. Yes, I get that, but I think so. Her role in the show is the person who is actually going to be holding the fort, as it were, Winterfell. So, whereas Jon, and Arya and Daenerys and Ron and goodness knows all the other people are going to go off and fight. She is going to be the one who's organizing stuff behind the scenes and actually holding Winterfell. Now, whether Winterfell will stand or not is another matter, but her role is there behind the scenes to be actually doing the real work, not the going out and doing the fighting, but actually doing the real work to try and make sure that the people who are kind of glossed over in the TV series, but in the books, always comes back to the fact that there are thousands of people we never see. And Winterfell is not just a castle. There are tens of thousands of people living outside it in the winter in Wintertown. These are just like the normal farmers and crofters and all the rest of it who have move in the wintertime, move into Winterfell to just make best use of the fact that there's the hot springs there and there's food there and all the rest of it. And she's the person who is looking after them. So actually, whereas others are going away and doing their bit by fighting, she's the person who's making sure that the vast majority of the citizens can still eat, which is quite important. Sonny McLeod, I'm going to yell a lot, guys, just for your information. You yell ahead, that's absolutely fine. Okay, just having a quick flick through. Nicola says, I admit Sansa was a bit naive at the start of the show. She absolutely was naive, and there's no doubt about that whatsoever. And I think that this is good because there is a lot of characters who were not. They're very worldly wise from the first moment we meet them. People like Sandor and Bronn and Tyrion and so on. It helped the narrative of the story for us to be able to access it through somebody who has to learn these tough lessons. We're not just going into a gritty kind of situation where everybody knows exactly what the real world is like. We're seeing it through the eyes of a child who is having these notions of beauty and wonder just come crashing down around her as she is sold off from one person to another who abuses her here, who abuses her there. So yes, she was naive to start with, and I think that is a deliberate plot point, because otherwise we're just going to have a lot of characters who are either very worldly wise or get huge powers like Bran quite early on when they're very young. So because Sansa, and this is let me know if you want to talk about this, but because Sansa loses her direwolf quite early on and sort of loses of her, that also kind of alienates her from her upbringing. Okay, let's flick down here. What else have we got? She's almost like a newbie fantasy reader. Absolutely, Danny. That's Princes and Castles, and then George R. R. Martin does what George R. R. Martin does. This is very true. We've had I deliberately didn't ask for questions up front because I knew that we would get a lot of good chat going on in the chat room. I did get one from Leslie Galen. Hi, Leslie, saying, will Sansa have to fight physically this season? It'll be a shame to have her cowering all the time, but she's not a warrior. I think this, I picked up on this one now because it's referring to what I was just saying a moment ago. Her role is not to fight. It's a really important role, but she's not there to do the physically picking up a sword and attacking someone. She would be terrible at it. That's not where her skills are. But I don't think that means that she is cowering, as it were. She's now quite strong. She's had huge amounts of stuff thrown at her. She's able to take on people like Littlefinger. If you looked all the way through season 7, she was the moment Littlefinger sort of came up and started whispering his weird things in her ear, she would immediately just shut him down. There was that great line, wasn't there, about not needing to know what you're going to say. I'll just assume it was something clever. That's all the things she was just putting him down, and she was playing him and using him. So she's grown to the point where she realizes that she she has her own skill set. She's the one in the north who's got a slightly more political head. Yes, there are people like Tyrion heading up who can also help out with this, but she's the one who sort of starts raising some alarm bells and starts saying, actually, you know what? Can we trust Cersei? I don't think we can. I know what she's like, but the people in the north don't, because she, let's face it, has spent her time with the most manipulative people in Game of Thrones. She spent her time with Cersei. She saw what Tywin did when Tywin was moving her about. That she was married to Tyrion. She spent huge amounts of time with Littlefinger. Even Ramsay is one of the most conniving people on the show. She has learned from all these people. So when she gets to the north, she can take all this learning and then apply it. Her role is not the fighting. Her role is the politicking and the rulership, as it were. So not cowering, but ruling. Okay, let's have a look at a few more questions coming in here. Men of Winterfell says, I agree, Robert, she has control. She knew what Littlefinger wanted. Certainly later on. Earlier on, she didn't have control, but she learns it. But she did. Dan says, Sansa delegates. That's as exciting as she gets. Yeah, running a huge castle, ruling the north is not always exciting, and delegation is an important skill. It doesn't make her exciting. It doesn't make her the kind of person that I cheer when she comes on the screen, but it is in terms of is she a character that we think is good or a character that we think is not fun? Then I'm going to go with she's a good character. She's learned, she's grown. Clarissa Thompson talks about how Sansa managed with the ladies during the Battle of the Blackwater. Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the early signs that she's starting to learn how to do things. You see them a lot, actually, starting in season 2. She starts to learn how to play Joffrey. There's a scene, I think it was at the beginning of season 2, I'd have to go back and look, when there's Sir Dontos, who's this drunken knight, appears for this tourney that Joffrey set up, and Joffrey effectively says, you know, I'll just kill him, and Sansa says, oh no, he's really funny, you should make him your court jester. And Joffrey, you see for a moment Joffrey think and go, yes, that's even funnier, let's go off and do that. And that was Sansa from quite an early stage, playing with Joffrey, using him, knowing how he worked, trying to get her own way. So it starts off in small ways, but by the end, when she's manipulating Littlefinger, she is becoming a master of the art. So yeah, quite early on, there is quite a lot of her doing good stuff. She is there to delegate. The only female rulers, as this Ade saying, the only female rulers Westeros has seen have been in Dawn. Think of Nymeria and the Yellow Toad. Yeah, so the North hasn't had a queen in the North. We've got, apart from Dawn, this is a patriarchal society with male preference primogeniture, which means that the male son is always going to get preference over the male son. The son is always going to get preference over the daughter in terms of inheriting. And as a result, there aren't female rulers across the Seven Kingdoms. And this, one of the things which is most notable in very much in the show, is how we move from the situation where at the start of season 1 we have all of these great patriarchs. We have Ned Stark, we have Tywin Lannister, and so on, at the head of their house, and then one by one the men get struck down for whatever reason, and we get the head of the house is a woman. So we get Daenerys being at the head of House Targaryen. We find Yara coming up to be head of the Greyjoys, and so on. And we've also got people, like, we start to realize that whoever may technically be the head of House Tyrell, really the Queen of Thorns was always the head of House Tyrell. So the more we've got into it, the more we realize that the women start to take over control of a lot of these great houses. This isn't a sort of a mass movement. This is individuals, because of what has happened, rising to the top. And it doesn't mean that they are all individually ruling in a distinctly better or more feminine way. A lot of them having been brought up in this way, Daenerys is a key example, are still ruling in a typically male way, killing people who get in her way and so on. All of which is a slight digression, I admit, but no, Sansa would be the first queen of the North, as it were. And I think what she has shown is that out of all of the Starks, she's the one who's probably best suited for this. Hi. Cersei, what do you think? I think this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Kerry, I think this is a reference to Maggie the Frog's prophecy. Now, Maggie the Frog had a prophecy. It's shown on the show, one of the flashbacks, if you remember, when young Cersei goes to this woods witch and she gets a prophecy about the future. And she's hoping for some really good news about who she's going to marry and the children she's going to have and all the rest of it. And what she gets is a lot of answers that she probably doesn't want. And one of them is about a younger and more beautiful person. The assumption is a queen who will overthrow you, who will take your place. Now, as with all of these things, what matters less is the actual words of the prophecy, and what matters more is how Cersei reacts to it. And Cersei takes it very seriously. On the show, she clearly believes that the character, that the younger, more beautiful person is Marjorie Tyrell, and that drives a huge amount of the action, because she sees Marjorie's rise, she sees that she's good with the people, she sees that she's slowly but surely taking Tommen away from her, or taking Tommen's affections away from her. And so that belief is huge amounts of what drives her to blow up the Great Sept. It's not just to get rid of the High Sparrow and the threat there from the Faith Militant. It's also a matter of getting rid of all the other threats, and her big threat there is the Tyrells. So that is what's driving it. In terms of who whether this mysterious character who will bring her down is Sansa, I think it's possible, but I think this is going to be one of those prophecies where we will still be able, afterwards, we will still be able to argue about who it actually was. I think there's a strong argument that Daenerys may well be the one. I think there's also a strong argument, yes, it could be Sansa, particularly if we go down what we were talking about earlier when we were responding to Dan's question about Margaret Beaufort. If we're taking the idea that maybe she is going to be part of this Stark Lannister marriage to end all the infighting. So she could be. My guess, though, is probably not. Fraulein Winter, thank you, €20. That's incredibly kind. And sorry for the fake money. I will happily take euros, Fraulein Winter. That's not a problem at all. Thank you. Just thank you for giving Sansa a fair chance. Sansa learned from Cersei, Littlefinger, Tyrion, and also Ramsay. I wonder if she has any hidden plans. Yes, good question. I agree. She did. She learned from, as I said earlier, from a lot of incredibly manipulative people. So I think where she's at now is a position where she can use those skills that she's picked up from all these other people. Whether she has any hidden plans is an intriguing one. My guess, and we're talking show here rather than books, my guess is no. I think that the only sort of hidden plan she will start to emerge in season 8, because everything's going to get blown apart the moment, and I think this will happen the moment that people hear about Jon's parentage. The moment that that comes out, she is then going to be the center of holding the North together, because Jon effectively gave her the North to hold and control until he returned. And he went away with a bit of a flea in his ear from all the Northern Lords and the Lords of the Vale, saying just that we don't trust the Targaryens. Don't bring the Targaryens here. And he's going to return not only with Daenerys Targaryen, but 2 dragons, huge horde of Dothraki and some Unsullied, and goodness knows what else, all just charging up north and camping outside Winterfell. This is not going to be welcomed by the Northern Lords. Then when they find out that this person that they've made the King of the North actually is half Targaryen, this is going to start them, I don't know whether rebelling's probably too strong a word, but they're not going to be happy about the situation. They are not going to want this person who suddenly is no longer actually Ned Stark's son, because although they viewed him as a Stark, yes, he was a Snow, but they viewed him as a Stark. The main point was the fact that he is Ned Stark's son. Ned Stark being indisputably the rightful King of the North in their eyes, or the Lord of Winterfell. So if he's not Ned Stark's son, then that actually puts him below the people who are Ned Stark's son in their estimations in terms of who should be Lord of Winterfell. Obviously, they didn't pick up on it in season 7, but obviously Bran's return throws all of this up in the air as well, because Bran has got an even better claim than Sansa does, and probably even Jon, to be fair. But they didn't get into that. But I think that Sansa will be so involved in in managing that situation, so involved in the fact that quite soon, episode 2 or 3, I'm sure the White Walkers army will make its way to Winterfell. They won't avoid Winterfell on their march south. That I think any of these hidden plans are going to take backstage to whatever is actually happening in the real world. Once you've got a siege going on, you're not going to be worrying about little bits of machinations. You're just worrying about surviving. So I hope that answers that, and thank you very much again, Fraulein Winter. Okay, guys, I will come back. I can see there's some really good questions. I'm going to come back to these. I'd see particularly the one about Wagging, which I want to pick up on. I meant to talk about that. Just want to take a very a quick pause just to let you know a couple of things that are coming up. First of all, Westworld. I know there's a lot of Westworld fans out there. Westworld is starting a week on Sunday, Westworld season 2. And I will be devoting a reasonable amount of my time to covering season 2 as it unfolds. Now, what that means, first of all, I want to say that doesn't mean I'm going to be stopping doing Game of Thrones. I'll still keep doing Game of Thrones, but I'm going to try and up my output a little bit more. But for Westworld, my plan is I will certainly be doing live streams before every episode, hopefully on the Sunday before every episode. And then after every episode, I will be doing a breakdown of that episode. I'll do a video with an explained of what's been going on in that episode. And then one other thing during the week, either another live stream on Westworld if I think there's a lot to chat about, or perhaps a video looking at a specific issue. So over the weekend period, I'm going to be focusing a lot on Westworld. But I'm going to keep on going with Game of Thrones theory videos. I will try and keep on going with these Thursday live streams, focusing in on Game of Thrones, and of course, the Traveler's Guide. So that's that going on. Patrons, I wanted to tell you a couple of things that are happening. There is, as you probably know, I've been working my way through the Winds of Winter preview chapters, and the next one I'm going to be doing is Tyrion. I've been really looking forward to this one. That I've recorded it. I just need to edit it, so that's going to go live at some point in the next few days. So keep an eye out for that. And then, secondly, my $10 patrons over on Patreon. I like to give them a chance just every now and then to have a vote and an input into what videos I do. So the last time we did this, then actually 2 emerged out from that: my Kyburner character study and 3 tinfoil theories that I actually like. And both of those I thought were fantastic topics. So thank you, patrons. I can announce I've decided on the 3 topics that I'm going to put before my patrons. So one of these 3 is going to be made into a video, and it's down to you, patrons, to decide which one. I'll put the poll up at some point when I get a moment in the next couple of days. But the 3 topics I've decided on, topic number 1 is Bronn, a character study. So if you want to know a little bit more about Bronn, then maybe you want to choose that one. Secondly is going to be Varys. What did he see in the flames? So if you want to know what I think Varys saw in the flames way back when he was a child, then maybe you want to choose that one. And the third one, building on this discussion, is going to be something along the lines of why I don't hate Sansa. So if you want to have a think about that, as I say, $10 patrons and above get a chance to vote on that, and that's going to go live in the next few days. But as always, I just want to say thank you to all my patrons. I honestly cannot do this without your support, and it means so much to me. If you're not a patron and you're interested in either supporting the channel generally or just in any of the things I've just been talking about, there's a link down below in the description, or just go to patreon.com/InDeepGeek. That's fantastic. Okay, so that's just the notice of things coming up, and I will happily get back to if I scroll. Oh, lots of people are talking now. All talking. No more Sansa, says Dan. Varys got a few votes. Who else? Bronn. The James Bond of Westeros. Nice. Okay, so there's a lot of views coming through already. I will put I'll put the poll out at some point over the weekend for my $10 patrons, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so what I was going to go back to a question about. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was Laura D. I can't quite find it, but it was about whether Sansa's got Wagging abilities. And this is a really interesting one. Now, the first thing to say is that I think that the show has completely underplayed this across pretty much all of the Starks. It's shown a bit, obviously, with Bran. We see Bran wagging into Summer a few times, and we see that Jon's got a close relationship with Ghost. But Arya with Nymeria, in the books, she has dreams when she is Nymeria, so that's a lot closer. Jon regularly sort of wags into Ghost again in his dreams and has a very strong relationship with him. It's very clear that Rickon does with Shaggy Dog, and so it seems that all of the Starks do have some kind of wagging ability. The thing with Sansa, obviously, is that Lady her direwolf died very early on in the plot. So we don't see whether or not that bond has developed. Now, so the honest answer is we do not know whether she had that Wagging ability. I think for me, probably she did. As Ferris Blurter says, all Stark children have them, but Sansa didn't have the chance to use those Wagging powers since her direwolf died way too early. I think so. Yes, I think she probably did. We don't know for sure, but she probably did. Sadly, I don't think we'll actually ever see her have the opportunity to use it again, though. So this sort of goes with the idea that she is cut off from her Starkishness. She was always probably the least Starkish Stark. Her looks were very much like her mother, taking after the Tullys. She clearly, when she was growing up, she didn't love the very Starkish kind of virtues. She wanted to be down south with the more sort of courtly virtues. That was the kind of character that she was to start with. And it's only really, and we see it more and more, particularly in the show, the further through life she goes, the more she realizes what she's lost in the North. So she's not really the starkiest of Starks, but she probably still did have some kind of Wagging abilities. Let's have a quick flick through what else we got. Danielle Marston says, I wonder if they didn't want Sansa Wagging because Wagging is associated with Stark and it's to overemphasize how much she is like her mother. Yeah, exactly. And I think that was actually what George R.R. Martin was doing, was to show this her being, first of all, starting off not being very Starkish, but then also being cut off from the rest of the Starks. Let's have a quick flick through. George R.R. Martin said they're all wargs, so there's that. Yes, don't always believe everything that he says. He's sometimes sort of hedges his words quite a lot. Dan says Sansa is too tully, no warging, but she can crochet a lovely cardigan for the winter. Yes, she can definitely crochet a lovely cardigan, but I think she probably would have. She would have developed them. I think there's Godspeed comes out with a good point. Sansa speaks of dreaming she was a bird hunting a mouse and tasting its blood in her mouth. I like you, I can't remember the exact reference. There's something along those lines, but there's a lot of imagery of her as the little bird, not as with most of the Starks being wolf-like, but her as being a little bird in some way. Now, this, if she is going to be a skin changer, implies that perhaps it's not with a wolf, it's more likely to be with a bird of some kind. And we see that actually it's a wide variety of animals that can be skin changed into. Wagging is just the word that's used for when you've got a wolf or a dog, but skin changers can skin change into a variety of different animals. Talamasca Dan says Robert's trying to trigger me with Sansa option. Yeah, well, there's a lot of interest, as I said. What I've noticed was when I put this up that it created a lot of comment, and every time I've talked about Sansa just in a live stream, people are always interested. There's always an element of people who they say that they don't like the character, but people are always wanting to talk about her. There's something about her character that is certainly quite provocative. Just a very quick shout out to Costume CO, who's popped up in the chat room. Hi there, Heidi. And I hope you don't mind me, Heidi, advertising your live stream, which is happening tomorrow. Please do put the time down there. Costume CO is an excellent channel. If you've not come across it, she did a live stream here with me on this channel a couple of months or so ago, and we talked about not just about sort of the how to make costumes, but what costumes teach us about characters, and how showrunners can use costume to help us understand character and character journeys and things like that. So I would highly recommend that you go and check out Costume CO's live stream, which is her first live stream. I will certainly be popping into the chat room just to give my support, and I think she would very much appreciate it if you do as well. So Heidi, please leave a link, or at least tell people what time it's on in the chat. That would be great, and please, everyone else, do go and have a look at it. You're very welcome, Heidi. Not a problem at all. 26 Art Girl, you've had foot surgery this morning, but glad to be here. Wow, that's great. I'm delighted you could make it. I hope your foot is better soon. Okay, so yeah, Costume CO, the first one on Saturday night, 6 p.m. EST. So there you go. At the same time that this started, but tomorrow. And please do tune in for that one. Okay, let me just have a quick flick through. If you've got any other questions, do drop them in there. I think I'd quite like to. Karen McDonald, you made a Westworld quiz on Amino. Good, I will go and check that one out. Can we talk briefly then about what Sansa's fate is? And by this, we've talked a little bit about who she might marry. And out of all the characters, I've noticed, out of all the characters of Game of Thrones, she is the one that people seem to come up with the most potential matches for. I've seen very passionate arguments for suggesting that she would end up with Sandor, and also with Jon, as well as with Tyrion, and also on her own. So there's clearly an interest in who she ends up with. But a bit beyond that, where do we think she's going to fundamentally end up? Now, the first clue, I think, as with all the Starks, is to look at the name of her direwolf. This is clearly very heavy foreshadowing on George R.R. Martin's part. For anyone who's not picked up on it, I did a video months and months ago about this. The Starks direwolves' names seem to be a heavy hint to the fate of that Stark. So, for example, we get Nymeria was a warrior queen, so we get Arya, who's turning into a fighter. We get Shaggy Dog. Shaggy Dog tale is a long, rambling tale that has no real point. That fits in with what Rickon's storyline is. There's no real point to it, but it's quite long and rambling. Ghost is something that dies and still comes back, which clearly fits Jon. So the names of the direwolves do hint at the fate of the characters, and Lady, for me, fits Sansa's fate. I think she will be the Stark who ends up in Winterfell. I think that of the other remaining candidates, Arya, for me, she's not going to be a ruling lady. That's not what she's wanting to do. Bran is lost to the weirwood. Robb is already gone. Rickon's already gone, and I think that Jon, he's not wanting to be a ruler. I think the world is just going to get, even if he survives, which I think he probably won't, then I think the weight of the world will be too much, that it's he won't want to be doing ruling. So I think Sansa will end up as Lady of Winterfell. Whether she ends up in a higher throne, being sort of a co-ruler of the whole land, is a different matter. But I think definitely for me, Lady of Winterfell. Pardon me, sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit here. So we'll probably just about another 10 minutes or so. A couple of people asking about Rickon in the books. Yeah, I think his fate, it might be slightly different, but I think it will end up the same. He's gone off radar in the books, and we find Davos is going out searching for him. I think that he will be brought back in and then die in the books in the same kind of way as he was on the show. So I think that's basically it. Nikki L, with really interesting point. Sansa seems to have a stereotypical story arc. The victim who overcomes her oppressors, suggesting a good outcome for her future. Though George R. R. Martin likes to subvert expectations. Yes, this is true. The story arc that she's got is very much this standard story arc that we might see for somebody who gets battered and bruised and oppressed and abused, and comes through it all and gains some kind of poetic justice against the people who abused her. So yes, that seems quite standard. And I guess that we might say, if George R. R. Martin is trying to take things from a slightly different angle, then we might see that she in some way veers away from that, perhaps by becoming an abuser in some way herself, or perhaps by not completing this journey to a good place in whatever way that might be. Personally, I think she is one of those characters who is going to stick to that broad story arc, simply because she is, or George R. R. Martin clearly likes the cripples, bastards, and broken things idea. The overarching story arc that we've seen across lots of different characters, Sandor comes through a lot, Theon comes through a lot, Tyrion as well, is that the people who have been battered and broken, not just by individuals, but also by the system that's there, this feudalistic patriarchal system, which hurts everybody across the piece in Game of Thrones, tramples down the small folk all the time. The system and the individuals within it, the people who are hurt by that and survive, those are the ones who seem to be likely to get through to the end. And I think that Tyrion's little speech about the cripples, bastards, and broken things seems to be a hint to those are the kinds of people who will make it to the end, not the strong and mighty people who are strong and mighty all the way through from beginning to the end, but the people who are broken and yet pull through anyway. So yes, you could say that that's quite a standard storyline, but I think that it's a good storyline, and I think that the going against expectations is with characters like Jon, who fits every fantasy stereotype about the orphan boy, the child of prophecy, who is grows up without realizing that he's the heir to the kingdom, and all the rest of it. So I think that that's where the expectations will be blown, not with characters like Sansa. Shireen McLean, or maybe McLean, not sure. Sansa was afraid, first of all, £10, thank you very much. Sansa was afraid of the Hound due to his mutilated face. However, given what we know about Ramsay, her body is probably heavily disfigured or mutilated. Painful lesson not to take things at face value. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of learning there. I mentioned it briefly earlier on, but in the preview chapter for the Winds of Winter that we have for Sansa, Littlefinger is trying to set her up with this character called Harry Harding, who looks like he might take a bit of the role of Ramsay Bolton in her life. Certainly, another romantic interest is probably the wrong way to say it, but somebody that she's going to be partnered up with in some way. And we see it from her perspective, and she thinks he's really very attractive, but I remember what Joffrey was like, and it's not the attractive people that I should like. It's the people who are good to me. And she thinks of Tyrion in particular, who again she found physically repulsive, but she reflects on the fact that he was better and kinder to her than Joffrey was. And the same goes for the Hound. Who, yes, she was afraid of him, but she doesn't. She learns, I think, in retrospect, not to take that at face value. So I think that was a long way of going around to say yes, I agree very much with what you're saying there. Emmanuel Favuzza, $1.99. Thank you so much. That's really kind. North will be happy with Dany's army and dragons to help. Now, I think that the North will be slightly conflicted on this, because they will not want the Targaryens to take over again, but they will have to recognize that you need some sort of army or something to prevent the Night King's army. So I don't think they'll be welcoming them with open arms. I think that we will see quite a lot, certainly in episode one of season 8, will have huge amounts. I'm convinced of it. Huge amounts of scenes where you get people just like ruffled feathers in the north in Winterfell, as the Northern Lords realize that all the dragons are arriving, and Jon's not who they thought he was, and how can you trust Cersei, and there's lots of them. And then we'll get at some point Jaime Lannister will appear as well, so there'll be huge amounts of ruffled feathers. That I think will probably be sorted out, or at least if not sorted out, then they will go, okay, let's put all of these arguments over there and let's focus on what the real battle is to start with, and then we'll deal with all of this afterwards. So I think that they won't be happy, but they will welcome the support in the war that they have to fight. I hope that one makes sense. Fraulein Winter, €10. Thank you very much. That's really kind. Thank you for the great live stream, Robert. I have to get to bed now. Good night, everyone. Good night, Fraulein Winter. It's a pleasure as always. Okay, so we were talking about the future for Sansa, and we were talking about where she might end up, not just about who she might marry, but where she might end up. For me, I think that she will survive. I think she will be Lady of Winterfell. I think that she will probably be on her own. She won't see the need to marry anyone. She will have a perfect claim, not just to the north, but also she will have control to a degree over the Vale, because Sweet Robin, she is now the most influential character over him as well. And I think that she will find herself in a position of great power up in the north. So whatever new system is built after these great battles, she is going to be one of the major players. Okay, let's take a couple more questions before we wrap up. Costume CO says, "I don't think Sansa will marry." Yes, I think I probably agree with you. I'm getting more interested in this this as an idea the more we get into it. Aid Austin, do you think that the North will be happy if they get the Brexit they seem to want? Don't answer being cheeky. North exit, Nexit, maybe? I don't know. I think that they definitely would want to have a Nexit. Let's have a look, see who else is going on there. Misty says, Catelyn made it obvious she preferred her sons. Maybe that's why they didn't mind going to King's Landing. this is talking about the daughters. Now, it's something that's we quite often overlook. Bran was going to go to King's Landing. That was the plan until, obviously, he got pushed out of the window by Jaime. But he was also going to go down to King's Landing. So it wasn't a matter of just the two girls going down. It was also going to be Bran going down. So Robb was going to stay in the north with Rickon, and Jon was going to head up to the Wall, and then the three other children were going to be heading down south. So that was the original plan, and I think that Catelyn, did like all of her children. The one that she had the problem with was Jon, not anything else. Let's so Emmanuel, another super chat. Thank you, Emmanuel. Jeremy is Lord of the Rock, so won't the Red Army be loyal to him when he goes north? Jaime, I think that is Lord of the Rock, so won't the army go with him when he goes north? Also, will Edmure Tully be freed, bringing the River Army north? Yes, so I think that Jaime will go north. I think that he won't take the army from King's Land. This is show stuff. I think this is going to be different in the books probably, but we're quite a way away from this. But I think we saw Jaime go north on his own. I think that he will start to pick up people on the way. I think that he will probably meet up with Bronn, so he's going north with Bronn, and I think that he will pick up the Lannister army in the Riverlands, because the Lannister army is still in the Riverlands, and take that up north with him. And I think that probably means that he's going to free, Edmure Tully, who is still there in prison, and he will free him up. Now, I suspect Edmure will probably be told, you stay here and guard the middle of the country while I head north. But yes, I could certainly see Jaime heading north with part of the Lannister army, who probably will be loyal to him because they respect him as the general. Okay, let's take a last couple of questions here. Isabel Campbell says 20,000 subscribers, Robert. Yes, I didn't mention this. I was really pleased, but just earlier this week I hit 20,000 subscribers over on YouTube, which really chuffed me, and I'm really I felt humbled and honored that there are people who have supported me so much in this. I will definitely be carrying on this. I view this as just the start. I've got lots of really big plans for the rest of this year for doing even more. Obviously, we've got Westworld, but I've got a few other things that I want to start doing to bring even more content. I'm looking more into the audio narration. So if you like the audio narrations I've been doing, the Winds of Winter, I'm looking into doing a bit more of that. And I'm also looking to do a few exciting things with the Traveller's Guide to Westeros. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be making some announcements over the summer, but thank you. 20,000 is a really big landmark for me, and I was very pleased. I raised a glass of Dornish Red to it, and I was very happy. So thank you, Isabel. That's really kind. Okay, so let's just do last couple of things on that. LL, congratulations on that. Thank you so much. Saying, since Robb left Sansa out of his will she be the Lady of Winterfell in the books? And if not, will it mean a glitch for her on the show? This is a good question. So in the books, we never actually see it, but we hear Robb talking to Catelyn, talking to his mother about his will before he dies, he writes this will and he sends it off back up to Winterfell. Now, the heavy implication is that he legitimizes Jon in the will, which would then potentially make him the heir to Winterfell. Now, they've not talked about that really on the show, so that's not come up so much. But I could see that this could be a way that the books could take us to the same place where he ends up being the king of the North, because I think that everyone suddenly standing up and acclaiming him as the king of the North it doesn't work so well, I think, for me on the pages of a book. Maybe that's the way George R. R. Martin goes with it, but I think perhaps the support of Robb Stark in the will. Hi, I think I just glitched out there. Do let me know if I'm back. Can you see me? Somebody shout if you can see me on the in the. I'm back. Excellent. Thank you. Sorry, I completely lost. Sorry, my screen just suddenly went black. I must have just had a quick break in the internet coverage. So apologies for that, but I'm back. To finish off that thought, I think that the moment that we get Jon revealed as a part Targaryen, then I think we're going to have the exact same situation in the books that we have in the show, and that I think is going to be the case a lot between the books and the show. Is that the end points are going to be quite similar across the book and the show, but how they get there might well be quite different. And we've digressed a little bit from Sansa here, but with Sansa, then her arc in the books is quite different. She's not been married off to Ramsay in the books. There's this other character, Harry Harding, that she's got involved with. She's spent a lot more time in the Eyrie, gaining the skills that she needs in the Eyrie, rather than through this abusive relationship with Ramsay. But I think that it's quite clear that she will end up coming back up to the north, meeting up again with Jon, bringing the army of the Vale with her, and that will help them recapture Winterfell. So I think that the same thing will happen, but through a slightly different route. Okay, so we're back. Lots of people wondering. I did not get assassinated, no, and it's hopefully all back up again. A Game of Theories with Marie, 5, I think that's Australian dollars. Thank you very much. Sansa is the only one who had a hand in the murder of Joffrey. She sent Brienne to King's Landing. This fits with Maggie's prophecy. Now, the murder of Joffrey was she didn't know. This wasn't Sansa's doing. This was Littlefinger and the Queen of Thorns, Olenna Tyrell's doing. She was merely the vehicle for this, I would say. That being said, that prophecies work in strange ways, so maybe she doesn't have to have intent in order to do this. Maggie's prophecy has got many parts to it, and one of them is about the deaths of her children, which obviously on the show we've seen the deaths of all 3 children. Then, of course, we get onto the Valonqar, which I don't think you're suggesting that Sansa is, but there is another possibility, as you've mentioned Brienne. There's another possibility that the younger, more beautiful person is Brienne. Jaime, incidentally, and I was reading this while I was doing my research for the Bloodraven video that I put up a few days ago. Jaime, in a scene which didn't make it to the show, but it's in the books, he spent a night sleeping with his head on a tree stump, which he realizes afterwards, when he scrapes away the moss, was a weirwood tree stump. And while he's asleep, he has an incredibly vivid dream, which I'm not going to go into the detail of it, but Cerseis there and Brienne is also there, and Brienne, in that dream, he sees her as beautiful and sees the beauty in her. And so, yes, there is a possibility, given that this is in the same dream as Cersei, there's a possibility that it's the beauty of Brienne is in Jaime's eye rather than in Cersei's eye. And for those who haven't read the books, the character in the show of Brienne is quite an attraction. She's a model, in fact. But in the books, she is described very clearly as not being particularly physically attractive. In fact, a lot of people think quite the opposite. So it would be quite a turnabout if the person who many people consider to be ugly is in fact in prophecy the beautiful one. Okay, guys, I think I am going to wrap that one up here. If you've got any final questions, just do quickly throw them in there, because I just want to tell you a few. Oh, Emilia, is that the quote there? In this light, she could almost be a beauty. In this light, she could almost be a knight. Yes, I think that's right. That's what it says. So yes, she's seen as beautiful by Jaime in that vision. Guys, I just want to quickly remind you about a few things coming up. Westworld is coming up. I've got a lot of Westworld content coming up. I'm going to be live streaming tomorrow with Justin Thomas on Justin Thomas's show. And then my Westworld Season 2 predictions videos will be coming out over the next few days. So if you want to know what I think is going to be happening in Westworld, check out those videos. They're coming out soon. Obviously, keeping on with the Traveller's Guide. Every Friday, the Traveller's Guide is coming out, and we're going to be in Deepwood Motte this time, which is actually a fascinating place. So do please check that one out. Patrons, I told you a little bit earlier what the 3 options are going to be for my $10 patrons to be voting on in terms of the next video. And please also keep an eye out for the Tyrion chapter from the Winds of Winter that I'm going to be narrating. Again, that's going to be coming out over the next few days. So that's about it, guys. Thank you so much. This has been really fun. There's been a lot of great chat in there. I realized there were a lot of questions that I didn't get a chance to get to, and a lot of comments. It's because things have been moving through really quickly, which is a great sign that there's some really good conversation going on. So, guys, thank you so much. I will be live streaming again really soon. Do check out Costume CEO's live stream on Saturday. Check out Justin Thomas's live stream tomorrow. And until then, have a really good time. Take care, guys. See you.